I'm Erin O'Riordan, and I'm with my husband and co-author, Tit Ellington. Say hi, Tit.
Hi, Tit. Welcome back to the Almanac of Erin O'Riordan. What do you have for us today, Erin?
Today is September 14th. On September 14th, 1321, Dante Alighieri dies. His date of birth exactly is unknown. He was born sometime around 1265, and he's the author of the Divine Comedy, Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso.
That's amazing. Somebody from the 1300s, the 14th century, and their book is still in circulation today.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing.
What else you got?
This is something you and I have talked about before. On September 14th, 1752, England switches over from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. The day before had been September 3rd. The dates of September 4th through September 13th were not observed in England in 1752.
The Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar, and we are currently living under the Gregorian calendar?
Right. The Gregorian calendar is the calendar we know now with 12 months, January through December.
The dates of September 4th through September 13th were not observed. So what did they do?
Well, yesterday it was September 3rd, and then today it was September 14th.
Okay, that doesn't make a bit of sense, but I think that we'll just move on.
They just didn't do those days. Everybody just agreed when they went to bed on the night of the 3rd, okay, when we wake up tomorrow is going to be the 14th.
Okay, I suppose it makes sense, and they had to have had some reason for it.
Yeah, the Gregorian calendar builds a tiny bit more time into the year. It's a little bit closer to the actual full revolution of the Earth around the sun. That little bit of difference between the Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar over a century or more than a century, that little bit of difference had added up to like 9 days. So that's why they skipped ahead to the 14th.
Oh, I see. So it was just that year that they decided to get all their leap years in at once.
Basically, they had all their leap years in 1752.
Okay, now it makes sense. Okay, so let's legitimately move on.
So we're going to skip way ahead to the year 1973 when the rapper Nas is born in Brooklyn, and his full name is, of course, Nasir bin Oludara Jones. On September 14, 1983, on Nas's 10th birthday, 10 years later, and I am 6 years old on this day, Amy Jade Winehouse is born in London. She will write the song Me and Mr. Jones about Nas, mentioning their shared birthday, September 14. In the lyrics of that song, she sings Mr. Destiny, 9 and 14. 9 and 14 is their birth date, and Destiny is the name of Nas's daughter.
Fascinating. Well, I would definitely like to hear some Amy Winehouse.
Yeah. On September 14, 1995, St. Mary's College. This is my diary entry now. After dinner and several attempts at playing Aura Lee on the guitar, I went to Clarissa Dalloway's Coffee House on the St. Mary's College campus and saw Catherine O'Donnell, Katie Sullivan, and Melissa Manier perform The Maids by Jean Genet. It was a cool play. It was a little weird. I hardly ever saw plays when I was a freshman in college. I saw that show with my American literature class 2 years ago. It was December 2nd. And once during my time at Holy Cross Grade School, I saw Cole Porter's Anything Goes at Notre Dame. Catherine O'Donnell said The Maids was based on a true story. 2 maids in Le Mans, France, where the nuns who founded St. Mary's came from, murdered their madame and her daughter, tore out their eyeballs, and bathed them in each other's blood.
Oh.
Sorry, should have said trigger warning for gruesome violence.
Oh my.
Genet loved criminals and looked up to the murderers. That's what I wrote in my diary in 1995. I'll get into it a little bit later here. This is a little bit more of an explanation. The names of the real-life murderers were Christine and Leah Papin, that Jean Genet based his play on. In February 1933, the women murdered their employer, Madame Léonie Lancelin, and her daughter Geneviève. The killers confessed, and although they didn't ever name a motive, police suspected they were angry because an electrical fuse in the home had recently blown, and Madame Lancelin, the employer, intended to deduct the cost of the electrical fuse being replaced from their wages. French socialists at the time, probably including Jean Genet, didn't so much admire the women as romanticized them as a symbol of the oppressed working class. So I just want to add that little bit of nuance there. In the play, the fictional maids, Claire and Solange, over-identify with their mistress and her wealth and privilege, and they lose their own identities in the process.
They basically became worshippers of her wealth and her status, and then when they had to suffer consequences because of her arrogance, they turned on her.
Yeah, that's what happens in the play.
Interesting. Now, it being at St. Mary's, was it an all-woman cast?
Yes, there are only 3 characters in the play. The play is performed by 3 women, yes.
Oh, and it's just about the 3 women?
Yes, there are no other characters in the play.
Oh, okay. The reason I asked that is because we went to a Macbeth play at St. Mary's that was put on by all women, and it was amazing.
Yeah, that was a great one.
Okay, what do we got next?
The following year, September 14, 1996, still at St. Mary's College, I went to my first Notre Dame football game. Notre Dame beat Purdue 35-0, and it rained the whole time. In the evening, I went to an off-campus party at the home of Melissa, a classmate of mine at St. Joe High School and at St. Mary's, and it was a jam session. It was very cool.
That sounds really cool. Do you remember the one and only Notre Dame game that I've ever been to that was a historic event, that it was the only time they ever evacuated the stadium due to a storm?
Yeah, they made us all go inside the basketball stadium.
That was pretty amazing that the one time I ever get to go ends up being a historic event.
Yeah.
Okay, what was next?
Last in our chronological order, we have September 14, 2005. The highlight of this day for me was picking up the mail and finding my brand new issue of Bust magazine. Some of the best parts were Day of the Jacko by Wendy McClure. She says worshiping him being Michael Jackson, and it was 1982, FYI. Worshiping him was uncomplicated. There were no itchy physical stirrings to make us feel guilty or embarrassed. When we were 12, we'd sooner die than cop to furtive habits like taping Duran Duran's Rio video and hitting pause so we could stare at John Taylor's Speedo. But when Michael Jackson grabbed his crotch on TV, it was somehow okay. You could pretend that you'd been interested in it all along. When he danced and thrust his hips, he conveyed merely the idea of a naughty idea. End quote. John Taylor's Speedo, eh? And then there was also the DJ and rapper Princess Superstar reporting on how to get healthy, how to do your hair like Frida Kahlo, roller derby girls who have names like Carmen Monoxide and Legs Luther.
That's great. We had a tenant that was a roller derby girl one time.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, she was pretty interesting. She was tiny, but even though she was so tiny, she went out and participated.
Yeah, tiny but tough.
Yeah.
And the other thing that magazine had, that issue of Bust had in it, were book reviews, including Shattering the Glass, The Remarkable History of Women's Basketball by Pamela Grundy and Susan Shackelford, which I happen to be reading right now, at the time, in 2005.
Well, who's our sponsor today, Erin?
Today our sponsor is us again.
Okay, so the other day you introduced Cut,
Yes.
and then yesterday you read a snippet of it.
Yes, I did.
What do you have for us today?
We've been talking about our crime novel Cut, and today I'd like to introduce our other crime novel, the title of which is Eminent Domain, and I'd like to read the blurb of that. Eminent Domain. A young couple buys the waterfront home of their dreams. After years of rehab to their house, they find it was all in vain. The government is going to take it from them. Feeling robbed of his liberty, Jeff is hopeless and is willing to lose it all.
This story is a real life story about us. We had some issues with the city we lived in, and we had an old home that was on the river downtown Mishawaka, Indiana. It was caving in. When we first got married, you begged me to get that house because you knew I had the skills to remodel it.
Yes.
And the city came along not long after that, wanted to put a sidewalk in through our house because we were next to the Central Park, and they decided they were going to take our house. Rather than being nice and cordial, they tricked us and played mind games with us, threatening us with eminent domain. And they did this for many years, relentlessly. So I wanted to kill them, and I couldn't live with that in my heart. One morning I woke up, and since we had already done a couple of novels, I was determined that we were going to write this novel so that I could get it out of my heart and work through it. And it worked. It set me free, and it turns out it's a fantastic book that I'm very proud of, and everybody who reads it says we did a great job. And Erin miraculously typed 80,000 words in 2 weeks helping me write this book, and then we tore it apart for a year and a half before we published it.
We read you one almanac entry for each day of the year. If you want to read along, you can find the entries on ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com, where I am Coffee Supporter 86474. KOFISUPPORTER 86474. If you'd like to have Cut read to you, visit me on my YouTube channel. It's linked in the show description.
If you would like to have a copy of Cut or any of our other books, please visit our website at aeess.com or titellington.com, titellingtin.com, and you can find a selection of our other books that have links to Amazon.
Thank you, Spotify.
Bye.
Love you. I don't know why I'm waving. It doesn't know that I'm waving.